Hello, and welcome to the AB Relationships Podcast. Your hosts are Angela Lazariki, psychologist and psychotherapist, and Boris Hertzberg, psychoanalytic therapist and couples consultant. We talk about relationships and discuss some ways in which we can help each other in relating better. It is a space for sharing, discussing, and brainstorming common relationship difficulties, as well as real-life issues presented by our guests. Please note, this is not therapy, nor is it a substitute for therapy. Enjoy, as we are about to begin.
Okay, hello everybody, and hello Angela.
Hello, Boris.
We had been talking about who is starting this episode, and we were unsure about this. So we are trying to keep it as equal as possible.
Yes. I
So I guess sorry.
No, we're trying. I like the fact that we're trying to keep it equal and fair. I think it kind of reflects what is happening outside the podcast as well, right? And in general, in the world out there.
Yes, in the world out there, and also in relationships, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So what have we got for today?
Do you have any interesting fact or some quote to discuss before we introduce our guest?
I actually do. I was looking at some statistics having to do with marriage counseling and couples therapy, which I'm just looking at again right now. And I was looking at some research that had taken place in a university in the States, right? As usual, I think it was the Midwest Nazarene University, which had conducted this research. I think it was more like a survey, to be honest, where they asked about 1,000 couples about, their relationship, and more specifically about whether they had any couples therapy. And I think the percentage was 49% of the 1,000 couples that they asked had been in some form of couples counseling or couples therapy. And I thought that was really good. I was quite surprised, actually, by the percentage. It was higher than I thought.
It's much higher than I thought as well, by magnitudes. It's a good news that so many people choose to get help now.
Yes.
I was actually thinking that it would be actually 5% maximum. Not to sound too pessimistic, but...
Yeah. I'm guessing it also has to do with a culture, right? In some cultures, it might be 5% or 1%. In others, it might be a lot higher. So, this is the States, although it's the Midwest University, I'm guessing in the Midwest. I'm not very familiar with American culture, to be fair. I don't know if anyone who's listening who is from the States, if they have any more information to give us about the culture and the mindset of the Midwest, but it's still a very encouraging percentage.
What do you reckon could be the cultural, premises to go to therapy? What in general cultural or in society would help people go to counseling, to marriage counseling?
It's such a good question.
That's a big question I dropped on you.
That is a big question. Just the top of my head, I'm thinking certain characteristics that are present in the culture, maybe some kind of openness in experience. I'm thinking some of general characteristics that we have when it comes to new experiences, right? The ones that are important, like openness to new experience, flexibility, introspection.
You won't believe it, I am thinking about the same. I'm thinking that if the culture endorses experimenting and being open to something new, then more people are actually willing to try this new thing called therapy, new thing for them, because everybody starts once and somewhere. So it's very interesting. So what have we learned about the Midwest? It's experimenting society.
Yeah, maybe open-minded. I don't know. I'm wondering what the people who are from the Midwest and who might be listening to this episode are going to think. Maybe how clueless we are, or maybe how accurate we are. I don't know. Let's see.
Yes, let us know in the comments.
Yes.
Excellent. Are we ready to introduce our guest?
Yes, let's.
Okay, excellent. So her name is Sanam for the sake of our episode, and we are happy to welcome you, Sanam.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Tell us, what are you bringing here today? What would you like to discuss with us?
So ideally, I had experience myself moving to a new country. So I moved to Barcelona from South Africa. And I guess there was just a lot of emotions that went into that move. And it seemed a lot more difficult than I had ever imagined.
Mm, right. I mean, that is a big change right there. Massive transition, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it is, and it's very obviously a big move. But somehow being in the society of Barcelona, where there's so many youngsters here, and not only youngsters, even much older, more mature people, but there's so many people that have taken the plunge, but yet it seemed a lot more effortless to everyone around me. That was something I guess I struggled with.
Mm, right.
What exactly being the struggle? This thing that others are, it looks to you that the others are in a less emotional stress?
Mm, perhaps, maybe I think that's definitely one of the outcomes. But I think what I just realized was that it seemed a lot more easier for everyone else. And I think that I definitely had the comparison like monster in me where I was looking around and kind of comparing myself, evaluating my progress compared to everyone around me. And I know that everyone walks a different like route, a different story, but yet I would always compare myself against the best. So the quickest one, the best one, but not taking into consideration holistically. It was more just the best in one aspect. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So has that had an impact in your relationships as well?
Yes, 1,000%. I think, I mean, in a relationship, someone can definitely support you, but they can't carry you the entire way. And I think that there was a lot of strain that took place, like, in terms of maybe my moods being off more often than once, like, as opposed to back home where I felt myself constantly regulated and happy. And now I reached like a point where I was just going up and down. And that does have an impact on your relationships. And like sometimes you also have to understand where those emotions are coming from. And yeah, I just felt that it, well, for me, I just felt that coming from a place of kindness would have, in retrospect, helped a lot. And
Mm,
kindness for myself to kind of manage relationships, whether it's not just being a boyfriend, girlfriend, but also with your friends and stuff. Yeah. I think in today's society, when you asked how are you, the often go to is I'm okay. And you can only say that you're not okay maybe once, but maybe not longer than 10 seconds. The story can't go on. And yeah, that's what I battled with. I think having so many changes and always finding that the answer had to be okay and good. I'm perfect and I'm thriving.
gosh, yeah. I mean, that sounds like that's a lot of pressure, isn't it? Putting
Yeah.
on your, and I mean, the move that you're describing is very big, right? Not just distance wise, but also I'm guessing cultural, the customs, the everything is different. So it's quite a big transition. And it is absolutely normal that it is going to have an impact on your relationships, right? Because we do become dysregulated when we have to face such a big change. Even if it's a change that we have planned for and it's a change maybe that we wanted, it's still massive, right? So it will be destabilizing for sure. And you're right. Then we kind of look to our relationships or support system to offer just that support.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sanam, would you be willing to specify what's your question? Something that we could ponder on?
So I guess maybe the question is, how would you, if you had to give guidance and help in such moves, what would your advice be in situations where you can have a lot more of a smoother landing and a happier landing in these like movements where there's a lot of change?
It's a very good question.
Yeah, excellent subject to discuss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one of the first things that comes to my mind is kind of what is the specific situation for each person that is attempting such a big change. So, am I making this move because, I'm going to university? So I'm a much younger person and I'm going to go into a context anyway, like the university context. So it will be easier potentially to socialize in my new surroundings. Am I going as a single parent? Am I going as a person who is going for work? Am I going with family? So all these things will definitely make a difference, right? In what support I have with me going to the new place or not having going to the new place. But in general, when I talk to, especially quite a few of my clients don't live in their country of birth or in the country that they grew up in. They have moved around just like yourself. And what we try to do together is find ways that are with which that they can integrate into the new society that they find themselves in. So whether that is through their work or their, university or school, whatever that is, or through hobbies, through activities, very, very gently, obviously not necessarily having to do everything at once. But what would be an easier way for me to kind of start putting my foot in and meeting people here, right? And kind of start creating a semblance of routine, a semblance of normality.
Yeah, key one. I think that's the one thing that I even think now, 5 years down the line, that sense of group and, that community is still not there. But if that's the most nourishing, I definitely think that would have helped a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting what Angela, also what you've been saying. It sounds to me like there are several points that could be outlined. First of all, of course, it's understood that moving to a new country requires adaptation. We cannot avoid it, and it will be stressful even if we find ourselves in the best conditions, because it's a new culture, it's new people, it's new language, it's everything, it's a new climate. So, of course, it takes time to adapt to it, and it's natural. Then I'm thinking about the goal for the sake of which we are moving to another country, because this goal can become something that helps us, alleviates our anxiety, and helps us stay focused. If this goal is well outlined and we are in touch with it, and it's something we really want, it can serve as good support for us in the new country. And the third thing, again, it's what you were saying, Angela, is the circumstances in which we move. If one is being a student and is moving to a new country, it probably opens up more possibilities for communication and being for socialization and being surrounded by people. And especially if you are younger, it also helps. Younger people tend to be more adaptive. If the situation, the circumstances are different, for example, if you are moving with the family and you have a small child, then probably one will be working, another one will be with the child. So it makes it more difficult to communicate with the people in the new country and to get a touch of this new culture. Yeah, these are the things that I would mention here in this context.
Mm-hmm. And I guess another one is the language, right? Which is very, very important, especially if we're going to a country where we don't speak the language. That can also be a hurdle, right? More often than not, that we kind of have to overcome. Whether we learn the language fluently or we do our best, but it can be a potential barrier.
1,000%. I mean, I think if I had to redo anything, it would be put Spanish as my priority, so I can kind of soak up that culture and, the ease of like learning and everything around. You're just a lot more open to it than, living in a bubble.
Certainly. I think great. The bubble that you said, yeah, that is a very good way of saying it. Yeah.
Sanam, do you speak Spanish, by the way?
Un poquito. I'm still learning, not very good, but at this point, I understand a lot more than I can speak.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a really good start, right? That's how it usually happens. We tend to understand first before producing the language, which is the trickier part.
Yeah. But work in progress. Let's see.
And Sanam, you also mentioned something about the relationships. Can you expand on it?
So what exactly? Like, how did it go down? Or
If you have something that you would like to discuss that has to do with the relationships. Because usually when we move to another country, even if we do it with our partner, it still affects our relationships. And if we meet a new partner in a new country, it's also different from what we are used to. So maybe you have
so maybe
something
I
to
can,
share or to ask here in
yeah,
this
so
field.
I can give you some context as to what happened to me is that I moved here single and I met someone here. And I think that besides all the changes of moving and adapting to life here, I also had a whirlwind of culture in my like personal life because I ended up dating someone who was half Spanish and half German. So with that, I think came, I mean, your values maybe are at the core, there's resemblance, but there's so many, I think, cultural shocks as to how certain things were acceptable, and I think that, I mean, for me, it was just hard, even though I knew we all different and we've been grown up in like different homes, but to accept certain things as, to give you an example, is that he had a child and I couldn't even like begin to understand how someone would then have a child but not dedicate their like life to them, to like being there, being supportive. The child was in Germany with their mom and stuff, and I was like, for me, that scared me because I liked the person I was with and what I saw, but yet those cultural differences where in South Africa a lot of people maybe over like care per se and like smother their kids and kind of dedicate their whole life towards it. And then when I come here, it's as if like, do they even exist in your life? Do you care about them? Like, you're not seeing them grow up. Like, are you making like a big enough effort? And that was like, I think, a shock to me to also kind of register, okay, is this traits of that would happen in our relationship or happen if we had to settle down? It's that easy for you to just move on, let go. There's lack of care. So there was a lot of cultural things that we battled with. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're opening such a massive and incredibly interesting topic, Sanam, because having two people connect, right, in an intimate relationship that come from very different cultures, possibly values as well, and how to make that work, right?
Yeah.
That is a very big question. Lots of things to unpack, for sure. Are you still together?
No, not anymore. But we did date for a good 2.5, 3 years. So yeah, I think there was a lot of like, I'm very open to learning about new things and kind of like pushing my comfort zone. But there was a point where I think when I got here, I also lost myself because I was so like, I was trying to be open about everything and take in as much as possible and not be so strong on certain viewpoints or the way I've done things, that I also lost maybe certain things that I wanted to keep because I was just so open to trying things. And equally with him, I was very open to hearing, but then I would often challenge it and like it wouldn't be justifiable. But I was like, okay, I was trying to fight it because like new culture, new people, whatever. But I think at the end, it came down to those core things that were maybe even brought up like at the beginning to begin with.
Sanam, can I ask why you separated?
I mean, I think in essence, it comes down to we ended very like well, but it came down to cultural differences, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
For me, it connects with what you started, that it seems to you that other people have it easier, and it might be that your adaptation is harder. And I'm thinking what you are telling us now. You moved to another country and into another continent, from Africa to Europe, and it
Yeah.
seems quite a change. You found a new relationship, it's also stressful. With it being a good thing, yes, we tend to think about relationship as something good, but still we need to accept the other person in our life. So it's an additional stress. Now, when you are telling about your ex-boyfriend's background, half Spanish, half German, so it seems to me that for you it also required to accept somebody different, to meet his German side and his Spanish side, and it's also stressful. So it's already four stresses. And then we add to it that he had a child. So it's also something that you had to deal with. So it seems to me that you really had it not easy, and it was stressful,
Yeah, I
justifyingly
chose my
stressful.
battles. I chose my battles very well. Yeah, I mean, look, I think at the end of it, I think I've come out very strong. And, like my view of things have changed for the better because of him. And I'm very grateful for it. But not to say, I mean, even being open, I don't necessarily come from that culture where, it's everyone back home would be accepting of welcoming someone into our family that has already had a relationship with a child and stuff. It would be seen very different. Now I have a different view to that, where I think that, a child is someone very innocent and it shouldn't be seen in that light. But I think that initially how the culture generically would accept it, that was there. Like it was even certain things, and maybe even in certain cultures a lot stands. So like, I mean, I do know German people to be quite hardworking, but they focused on their job and whatever the case is. And I was very similar to that. But with my ex, he was, I think, I guess, such a free spirit. There was a lot of things that maybe were very unsettling to me, coming from a culture from South Africa where security is number one. We live quite in a secure family, and like, we always push to get our degrees to like further ourselves, and then the fun happens. But he, like, at that time could not, or I guess he was in a transition stage, but he wasn't holding many jobs. Financially he was kind of distraught, and I had to like, like assist there. And if you don't know each other, I think to do that in the early stages where there's already so many differences can be problematic. But
Certainly.
I mean, yeah, there was a lot of, I think, cultural things. And like when I looked around at people, I think that made the move but was from Europe, I think that they handled the change a lot better. But now, if I had to look at it and like give myself advice, like 5 years back, I would say, like, you know, they came from a similar background. So whether it's, transportation, they used to the public transport, to always be walking, to always be hustling on, like, as you go. I think that that's very different. We have a lot more of a support system back home. And there's so many elements that I think, yeah, you have to compare apples with apples.
Exactly. Beautiful. I love that you said that, because what you're describing now is actually having that, perspective, putting your experience into perspective, right? Yes, I mean, it is very likely that people who are going to come from Europe, right, would have more similar backgrounds potentially, right, and more similar outlook. So
Exactly.
it wouldn't be such a leap for them. And therefore, it would look like, oh, okay, this is an easier transition for them. But, it's because your leap quite much larger, a lot larger.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I didn't.
Also,
I,
yes, Sam, I'm sorry. Please continue.
no, go. I mean, I was just saying I didn't even realize it at that point that, there was, yeah.
It also seems to me that you are describing a pretty solid learning curve. You had quite an experience, but also it seems to me that it has enriched you in
A
terms of what you've
1,000%. Yeah,
gone
I
through.
think today I can stand here very proudly to say that, I reached rock bottom before I started heading up. Like I did like hit a very fragile point. I think also because of personality, like I'm very, very hard with myself, very critical, and I'm always striving to be better and the best, like, and that wasn't necessarily what I needed. And now when I look at it, I am so thankful. I don't wish to repeat it, but when I look back, I'm very thankful for what happened, but also for the person I've become. Like, I don't wish to be that person 5 years ago. I feel like I would pick me today, like, over and over.
Perfect. I mean, beautiful. What a beautiful message that you're sharing with us. That's great. And kind of remembering what you said just a few minutes ago about, having that perspective. A lot of the times when we're right in the middle of the storm, it's very difficult, right? We lose perspective, we lose ourselves. We can be very harsh with ourselves, but kind of keeping this as a reminder, like, wait a minute, my situation is not the same as everybody else's, right? My background, my journey, kind of keeping that at the back of our minds as a reminder.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing. I mean, personally, I struggle with. In hindsight, it's like, yes, I wish, but being kind to yourself and I find is one of the hardest things. And I don't understand why it's so hard. But yeah, definitely for the next time, hopefully, I remember that one.
Yeah.
I hate to be the bad cop, but our time is running out. We are trying to keep it within 30 minutes. Let's summarize it. Let's ask our guest first. Sanam, how are you feeling?
Good.
Good. I like that.
Was it helpful in any sense?
Yeah, of course. I think speaking about it, especially and getting good advice, is always, for me, I feel like communicating and talking about it is a healing process for me. So always, I'm an advocate for it.
Excellent. Thank you for coming and sharing. And Angela, how are you?
I'm great. I could just go on and on and on talking to Sanam. So thank you very much, Sanam, for coming. I'm jotting down ideas about topics for the podcast based on what you are saying, because I think you're bringing a lot of good ideas. So thank you for talking to us.
You're welcome.
Yes, maybe we'll invite Sanam again. And I'm thinking about what Sanam had been saying previously. I mean, who said that having it easier is better? Sometimes it's good to have something challenging because, after all, it makes us more understanding and more flexible, more adaptive. Of course, it's not about burdening ourselves and burying ourselves under something we cannot carry, but having to deal with the challenge, even if others have it easier, is sometimes good.
Very nicely said. Very good. Yes. And thank you, Boris, as well.
And thank you, Angela. Thanks to everybody who had been with us. And see you again next time. And thank you, Sanam, again.
You were listening to the AB Relationships Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends and subscribe to be notified of the new episodes. If you would like to become our next guest, please leave your details in the form in the description. If you have any questions or would like to talk to the hosts, please also refer to the description.